Welcome back to the Bronco Nation, your place for all things Bronco. Today we're here in Logan, Utah at Rockslide Engineering to install some step sliders on our Bronco. Rockslide Engineering has been creating and fabricating off-road parts in the USA since 2004. Since the Bronco came out, they've been designing off-road parts that fit the Ford Bronco. Today we're going to be installing the step sliders, a combination rock slider and powered step as you open the door. Before you install the step sliders, if you have factory rock sliders, remove the 11 bolts that hold the slider in place, then remove the rock slider. The first step in the installation is running the harness along the driver's side of the Bronco along the frame rail. First, lay out the harness beside the Bronco, then remove the fuse from the harness. Beginning with the driver's side, zip tie the Rockslide Engineering harness to the original Ford harness along the frame rail. We put the Bronco up on the lift so you could easily see under the Bronco, but you can do this laying on the floor of your garage or driveway. The next step is connecting the harness under the engine bay. First, run the front of the harness up into the wheel well and pull it up through the engine bay. Attach the red wire to the positive terminal and the black wire to the negative terminal. After the harness is connected in the engine bay, run the harness up to the dash for the main switch. To do this, first remove the middle rocker panel on the rear driver's side door and pull up the carpet. When you do this, you'll see the floor drain plug. Remove the plug by squeezing the tabs underneath and feed the rock switch connectors and door connector through the hole. Make a small cut in the provided grommet and push the connectors through the hole and press the grommet back into the drain plug hole. You'll repeat this process on the other side once you've run the wire harness under the Bronco. Then run the harness along the side of the Bronco, hiding it under the trim pieces along the floor. Follow the trim pieces to the front and then tuck the harness in under the footrest and up toward the steering column. Then lower the steering column to expose the bolt where your rocker switch bracket will attach. Remove this bolt with a 10mm socket, install the bracket, and reinstall the bolt. Plug the red, yellow, and black wires from the harness into the back of the switch and insert the switch into the bracket. Push it in until it snaps into place. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, why would I even want to include this switch under the dash? Well, Rockslide Engineering put that in place because of a situation like this. We're on an obstacle, maybe we need to hop out to see what's ahead or something's gone wrong, and we don't want our steps to fold down when we open our door and hit the obstacle. So by turning them off when you're out on the trail or something like that, that prevents the steps from going down when you don't want them to. And the nice thing about this switch is it's nicely tucked under the dash, so it's not something that you're gonna see all the time, and it's not something that gets in the way. Once the connector is in place, we'll continue running the harness to the passenger side. Under the Bronco, follow the factory harness and zip tie the Rockslide Engineering harness beside it, next to the crossmember. Then push the harness over the fuel tank and over the frame rail on the passenger side. Take your time doing this. It's hard to show this on camera, but this is going to be one of the hardest parts of installing this harness. Then secure the harness under the passenger side just like the driver's side. With the harness in place, we'll move on to prep and install the step sliders. First, install the rubber trim pieces on both sliders. To do this, press the rubber trim into the inner edge of the step slider and stretch it to fit. You can also cut the rubber trim piece so it sits flush on the slider. The first bracket we're going to install is under the front driver's side door, where these two bolts are. Remove the bolts and slide them through the spacer plate. Then install the spacer plate back on the Bronco. There are 5 brackets that we'll install on each side of the Bronco. For the first bracket, use a breaker bar and loosen the body bolt under the front driver's side of the Bronco. This bolt only needs to be loose enough to slide the bracket in behind it. Next, we'll install the second bracket on the pinch seam next to the first bracket. Then, further down the Bronco, we'll install brackets 3 and 4. At this point, leave all your bracket bolts loose so that you're able to move the bracket when sliding the slider in place. Last, we'll install the 5th bracket on the body bolt by the back door. If the washers on the body bolts aren't going up to give you enough room to slide the bracket in, grab a socket that'll fit over the bolt and hit the socket to push the washer up over the threads of the bolt to give you more room. Now, before you install your step slider, pull the circuit board and motor connector through the last cutout so you can easily access these connections later. For this next part, you're going to want to get some help lifting the step slider in place and getting the bolts started. Lift the step slider in place and slide the bolts on the step slider through the pinch seam bolts on the Bronco. There are 6 bolts on each slider. Bolt 1 and 3 are smaller size and have a 5/16 nut, while the other 4 are the larger size with a 1/2 inch nut. Then, plug the circuit board and motor connector into the harness and then insert and tighten the remaining bolts. With the steps in place, screw in the body bolts. If some of these are difficult to get started, use a pick to help you line up the bolt holes. With all the bolts in place, now is the time to tighten everything down. Then repeat the same process on the passenger side. The final steps in the installation are putting the triggers for the steps in place. We're going to start at the driver's side door. Peel one side of the adhesive and stick it to the back of the sensor. Then, using an alcohol wipe, clean the pinch seam and stick the sensor in place at the edge of the plastic molding. Then expose the adhesive on the foam wire protector and stick it on the inside of the pinch seam. Connect the door sensor to the blue wire connector and tuck it inside the rocker panel. On the door, clean the underside with an alcohol pad. Then expose a small part of the adhesive and stick it on the door. Now's the time to test your alignment. Turn the system on and see if the magnet on the door is lined up with the sensor on the body. If everything works, mark your location, remove the remaining adhesive, and stick the magnet to the door. This process is the same on the remaining doors. Now, as soon as we got our Rockslide slide steps on, we wanted to test it out on the trail. So we just ran the trail to the top of the world, and we're up here, and the slide steps, man, they did fantastic. Now, like I said, I turned the steps off while I was on the trail just so when I opened the door, it didn't bang into anything. Now, there's a couple additional options that you can get with these slide steps. First is what I recommend, and that's the skid plate. And that's just gonna protect the steps and protect the whole thing when you're off-road like we were today. It really adds some additional strength to it and just additional protection to the steps as well. The other thing you can get are lights that illuminate when the doors are open so that at night you can actually see the steps, and it's a really cool feature. And the last one is the door delete kit. When you remove the doors, it just gives you the ability to drop the steps if you want them, or just keep them up if you want to keep them up. But really a great product. Thank you so much to the Rockslide engineering guys for their help installing these and putting them all together. If you want to get a set, check the link below. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And hey, if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to head over to the bronconation.com, where you can join the community, catch up on all your Bronco news, or get some new Bronco gear. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.